You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com.
Ted and I are firm believers in this, but this just goes to highlight the whole belief that the only limitations you have are the quality and quantity of the people in your life.
I feel like had I not taken that plunge and just like sat there and let that opportunity go by, I wouldn't know what I know now, of course, and or had the opportunity to meet a lot of these folks that I know now.
Welcome to REIA Radio, episode 210 with Abe Garcia.
Abe, welcome to the show. I have a question for you that I just came up with this morning, and I'm curious what you're going to say. If you could pick any celebrity to be your business partner in your real estate business, who would it be and why? You had no idea I was going to ask you this, so I
No, I did not. That one caught me way off guard. I'm not going to lie.
I don't even know who I'd pick for that.
No, that's a tough one.
And business partner with what? That too. And that's the next question. Like multifamily, single family, like.
Well, yeah, but like I'm more interested
life
in
partner.
This is my question, Ted. Don't be trying to change everything.
I think Abe wants to understand it better.
No, yeah. I'm saying based on what you know about any celebrity, who would you pick and why for a partnership?
I would say Donald Trump.
Okay.
Just because he comes from a dynasty of real estate.
All right.
And I have, I think he'd be a good fit for me because I can learn from him. Being such a successful businessman, and I think, now being a president. Can I say that? Like, I don't know.
You say whatever you want.
I love how we're coming in hot with the controversial choice here. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So you get to learn how DJ TJ used to run things. Now, what about you, Ted? Who would you pick? I know I have two. I'm going to take some liberties here since this is my question. I'm going to give you two of them.
Oh, man. I would have to think of somebody that is successful, but also probably has a real estate portfolio. If I had to think of an actual celebrity, I'm probably going to go with the Terminator himself. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, he does have. He made his first fortune in real estate. Yeah, that's a solid pick. I like it.
And if I have to pick somebody that's on the kind of like the real estate
realm, you can't burn another pick.
You said
no. This is me.
You specifically said two picks.
I said I get two picks. This is my question. You get one. Okay, and like it.
So that was my celebrity pick.
Oh, okay. Who's your non-celebrity?
Okay, and if I had to pick somebody that was like social media, influencer.
If you take my pick, I'm going to be mad.
I pick Owen.
Oh, yeah, I'm an influencer. Quit brown nosing.
That's what I should have said, right? Yeah.
I have two. I'm going to give you my two. Okay, this one is one that maybe not a lot of people are aware of, but okay. So Shark Tank, which I'm sure we've all watched at some point, right? And most of our listeners likely have. So A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, former Major League Baseball player, highly controversial because of the steroid scandal, but he had at one time signed the largest contract in Major League Baseball history, $250 million when he signed with Texas. He just has millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? He actually has 10,000 doors of multifamily that he owns. Did you know that?
I knew you had a big portfolio. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think I would probably pick A-Rod. And my other, now he's caught some flack in the media lately for the whole Blake Lively scandal with her movie, whatever it was called. I would probably pick Ryan Reynolds, because he is a branding, like, I don't know many celebrities outside of maybe The Rock or Shaq or whatever that have successfully branded multiple brands and turned them into, like, Ryan Reynolds has Mint Mobile. He had that Aviation Gin. He had the Wrexham soccer or football club. Football to you international listeners, and has taken them all the way up to one level below the Premier League. That's freaking amazing.
Maybe the names we're picking are too big. Maybe we need to pick somebody that has a lot of money that wants to get in real estate, and they'll just go ahead and just fork it over for us to, make the right decision.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Barbara Corcoran might be another pick, but she's going to die probably at some point soon.
Maybe a Patrick Mahomes. He's buying a lot of stuff.
Oh, or Bud Crawford. That was an answer at Caffeine and Cap Rates.
That would be a good one.
Yeah. And he could just beat the tar out of you if the deal goes south. So that's kind of one of the downsides of choosing a boxer.
He's got his California real estate agent that's helping him buy everything.
Oh, yeah. Cheater. Okay, Abe, tell us a little bit about you, man. So your background prior to getting into real estate was what? What'd you do for work?
I was in the auto industry for just shy of 15 years.
15?
Yes.
Dang.
Yeah, I was selling cars at a small dealership, small town Nebraska, northeast Nebraska, before I moved down here.
What town's that?
Do you know where Madison, Nebraska's at?
That is one I
It's in between Columbus and Norfolk.
God's country.
Yeah. So I'd say about 90% of our clientele were farmers and stuff like that. It's very.
A lot of people go from California to Madison, Nebraska.
Yeah. Yeah, they all do.
Yeah. What part of California are you from?
So I'm originally from Gardena, California. It's in the LA area, just south of LA.
I went from LA to a town of 10.
Yeah, my classroom had more people in it than the whole town. No, we moved from California to Omaha. And we lived here for about 4 or 5 years before we moved to northeast Nebraska. And then, a few years after is when I started working at the dealership up there. And I met my wife up there and my kid, have my kids up there and all that kind of stuff. And then,
I met
the kids, yeah. But, and then I moved to Omaha a few years after that and worked at a dealership down here too.
Okay, I got to ask, anybody that comes from California and moves to a small town like that, were you running from the law? Or was it
my parents? Maybe I won. Maybe they were. I don't know.
How did they? Do you know the story? Like, why did they pick such a random place in the middle of nowhere? Did they have relatives here or something?
No, we didn't. Actually, one of our neighbors, their son moved out here, and they talked another neighbor into moving out here, and they talked my parents into moving out here. So we all lived in the same
That person needs to be your business partner.
I should have picked him, right? Yeah. No, because we all lived in the same apartment vicinity building or whatever, and they just talked us all into coming out here.
Was it a whole bunch of lies, or
I don't know what they said to my parents?
No, this is probably what. So we had Megan Ahern, the Tatty investor, on, and her original story was she lived, I think, in Southern California as well, and happened to come to Lincoln for whatever reason. They had picked Lincoln as a target market. She showed up here, if I remember the story correctly, or maybe it was Jeff that did this initial scouting.
It was
Megan.
It was Megan.
And she was like, the weather's amazing. It happened to be like the 1 week out of the year where we got actually 7 days in a row of decent weather.
It was like a random February.
Yeah, which never happens.
Oh,
she's like, it's beautiful and this and that. And he comes out and then it was like 20 below.
It was like full blizzard, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he's like, what the hell, man? So I'm wondering if maybe that was the case here. They just happened to catch a good week of weather.
Maybe, I don't know. But I know our first year here sucked. Our first winter, because it happened to be like the worst winter they've had in God knows how long.
How old were you at the time?
14.
Okay.
Just right
so
after
you remember, you obviously
yeah.
remember it. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming from, Southern California, all we had were hoodies and shorts. So yeah, we weren't prepared.
Well, to be fair, all the kids wear hoodies and shorts no matter what temperatures outside now. I don't know if my kids actually own a coat.
Yeah, my son's that person. I'm like, dude, it is like 15 degrees out.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
I got a sweatshirt on, dude. It's fine.
Yeah. It's so weird.
I have a beanie on. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so auto industry. Now, that was in sales, is that right?
Yes.
And did you start out in sales, or were you involved in the business in some other fashion before?
No, I started detailing cars. I was like the car wash guy, the lot porter, and all that kind of stuff. And then I would see all the sales guys, driving around in cars, and just kind of that sort of image that I had of them. And I was like, well, I guess I can try selling some cars and stuff like that.
I slipped a lot of 20s to the lot porters and the car wash guys when I was working at Woodhouse.
Of course, thank you for that.
Yes, because it got my cars done faster, which made my turnaround a lot better.
Okay, little tricks of the trade here from Teddy Ballgame.
I know you had a couple of those guys doing that.
Oh yeah, I'd buy them lunch sometimes, or I'd go get gas in their car, bring them back something to drink when it was like super hot out or whatever. Or
nice.
When lunch would come, I'd call them up like, hey man, lunch is here, so that way, like all the salespeople wouldn't eat all the lunch, and then they'd be picking over whatever was left.
I love it. Okay, bribery existed early on in your business life, so that's good. Now, okay, I'm going to ask both of you, since you, Ted, nobody's surprised that you sold cars with your 10,000 career changes you've had. But
I just always worked 4 or 5 jobs simultaneously.
You did that for 15 years. That's a long time.
Yes.
When and why did you get out of that?
So I got out of it about, I'd say 4 years ago.
Okay.
And my biggest reason was I saw that my kids were getting older, and I knew that I was not going to get that time back being at the dealership 40 to 50 hours a week or however long.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to miss out on their most crucial years of growth. I mean, I think, they're all crucial, right?
Sure.
But at what point do you look back and say, okay, wow, I was a great salesman and I had all this success at the dealership, but how was your success at home? And how did the kids, see that? Are they going to say my dad worked really hard for someone else, or my dad was actually here for us to take us places and take care of us and stuff like that?
I feel like it's the most common thing that gets brought up over and over when we interview people that have kids, or even like sometimes we interview people that want kids.
And honestly, I think there's a big gap in the whole education system. Like we've talked about this before and as a broader topic, but specifically, I think there's a big gap in just teaching kids how to be an entrepreneur, how to start a small business, how to, eat your own cooking and not live under somebody's thumb, their entire life, because they have standard curriculums that prepare you basically for, whether it's white collar or some flavor of office job or career, or if you're going into a professional field, that's a little different, more specialized. But, it's hard to get the entrepreneurial skills based on education right out of high school. And another thing is they don't talk about the trade-offs between personal life and business when you are having to spend 45, 50 hours of your week, of 168 hours in a week, at somebody else's place of employment. And to your point, you miss out on family stuff and kids and their, just the day-to-day happenings because it changes so fast. How old are your kids now?
So my daughter's 14. My son's going to be 17 this month.
Okay. I'll have a soon to be 17-year-old as well in June. And then my youngest is 13.
Oh, okay.
So same.
Yeah.
And you have a boy and a girl?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What are their names?
So my daughter's name is Abe Garcia. And my son's name is Dominic.
Okay. Yeah. So is that a play off of your first name and incorporating that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We thought she was gonna be a boy, so I was like, okay, what do we name? And I was like Enzo, because I was a big car guy.
Yeah.
Still am, but and then it's like, nope, surprise, it's a girl. So I was like, okay, what? I didn't name the first one after me, so let's see what Then we find Abe Garcia.
Now, okay, so starting in the car business in a smaller town, you live in Omaha now or around here? And did you work for a dealership eventually in the Omaha market as well?
I did, yes.
Yeah. How long did you spend there?
Almost 10 years.
At the same one?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, I guess I had I don't count the month that I left and I went to somewhere else and then I came back, but
grass wasn't greener.
No.
Yeah. All right. If you're good at your job, and I would assume being in the business for 15 years, you developed some pretty good skills. And is that fair to say? Were you pretty good?
I think
salesman?
So. Yeah.
What does somebody like that make?
It depends on the pay plan structure. And if you are a volume guy versus what they call a gross guy, right? Some guys can sell 10 cars and make $7,000. And then there's guys that sell 15 cars and lose money on every single car.
Okay.
So you kind of have to pick and choose. Like, do I want to be the guy that sells the 10 cars and makes $7,000, because you're making good front end gross on the sale? Or do I want to be the volume guy? It all depends on, like I said, your pay structure and how you want to play that. If the pay structure is based on volume, then I guess you don't care if the car makes profit to an extent, right? You're just going to try to hit that 12 or 15 cars or whatever to get you to that next tier.
Okay, let me I know that. I understand the answer, totally get it. I'm not going to let you dodge the question though. Let's say, what does a top 10% producer make?
Oh, easily over 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is 250,000 achievable, or you're working your butt off?
You're working your butt off, and I'd say that's probably management. I guess I don't know what they made for sure, but I mean, I'd say some sort of management position. Yeah.
My 1 year, I hit top salesman 6 times in my store that year I was there, year and a half, but I did close to 120. But I was volume selling the new cars, and I was making profits on the used cars.
Do you make more as a salesman? Do you always make more money in used? Is that kind of a known thing?
Potentially. I mean, yeah. And in some cases, it depends on how they trade for the car and the
manufacturer rebates,
manufacturer spiffs too. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because
all right,
the dealerships don't really make money on new cars in most cases.
No,
they only make money on the trade-ins. And then if they hit certain numbers, then
they get like a bonus.
The dealership gets like could be $1 million plus. Like it gets a huge bonus off those from the manufacturer for hitting those big numbers.
Now, if that happens, do they then redistribute that to the salesmen that are responsible, or is that they just are like, hey, thanks for all the hard work, we'll keep this $1 million?
I know I worked at a Mazda dealership, and the year I was there, we hit the top Mazda dealership in the country.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a huge spiff behind that. So they took us all out to Mahogany. It was whatever we wanted. The bill tab was like $30,000.
Yeah.
But
it was like a drop in the bucket on what they made off.
It was, yes, it was short spiffs. But there's so many programs. Like they always had like some sort of spiff program, like a walk around car program. And we did the walk arounds. And if you had more knowledge on it, then you videotaped it. I took second in the country on that. And that paid several thousands of dollars. Plus I got an iPad and a whole bunch of stuff. And I got to meet the president of the company in Texas.
Oh, wow.
And so there was kind of like programs like that they always did, at least at our stores, to always keep you involved. But yeah, I mean, at least in the Mazda line, there was no profit. Like there was a Mazda 2, and every time they sold one, they lost $300 at sticker.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a loss leader, and then they're hoping for the volume on the back end. They'll get a spiff, and then they can take a chunk.
It's the trade-ins.
Yeah.
At that point, you just hope they're trading something in, and you can hold on a trade, as they say. And that's where you make your difference there, your profit and stuff like that.
This is just interesting to me because I don't know a ton about the business, and I've always just hated the process of going and buying cars. No offense to you guys personally, maybe Ted, but so do you do any marketing? Or are you guys set up on a 1099 basis? Are you running your own desks similar to how like a realtor does, although they work under a brokerage, or is it all inbound, like customers that come in and the dealership manages the marketing arm? Is that a thing?
Yes, they typically market, they do handle all the marketing. You're a W-2 employee. And then if you want to do anything above and beyond that, then you can, right? You can have your own Facebook page. I used to have my own Facebook page, and I do YouTube videos or just Facebook stories, or I'd even go down to, here locally down to South Omaha, and I would just hand out flyers or hang up stuff up, up on the businesses, just to try to get more clientele in. So that I took the initiative there on that. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, you just go through their database and call previous customers, some salespeople that have left, because the turnover can be pretty high at certain stores. That you probably saw that at Mazda. I don't know if you did, but you just go through and you start calling people up, just cold call them.
The crew of people I worked with are still there.
Really?
Not at Woodhouse. I just saw when I bought my truck from him, another guy. They all dispersed to different locations, but almost that whole entire staff is still with the company.
Man, that's nuts.
Interesting.
That's almost unheard. I mean, but they take care of the people there, though.
Some of those guys, like this guy named Jesse that is a friend of mine. We work out in the mornings a lot too, and he's been there for 30 years.
Wow. That's crazy.
We actually both left at the same time and went to Thrasher, and then he went back there after that.
And we've had Jim Endebrock was a long time car salesman.
He's back at car sales right now. He's part-time doing it.
Okay. And then we had Jeremy Murray, which was on one of the owners of Realty One Sterling.
Yep.
And yeah, so we've had a few in there. Talk maybe for a second about, you mentioned the why kind of became freedom of time and your ability to spend more time with your kids, focus on family,
right,
free up your schedule a little bit. So that sounds like maybe the why. How did you arrive at the what, which was the idea or guidance to get into real estate?
Jeremy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So we used to work together, and he ended up leaving like a year or so after I started working where I was at. And after, he became successful at real estate and things like that, he came back one time, and we just started talking. We got along just fine when we worked together. And he's like, hey, you know what, man? He's like, you ever thought about real estate? And I'm like, no, I've never, I've thought about it, but never really pursued it. He's like, yeah, I think you'd be good at it, man. And this conversation went on for a couple of years. So it took him a couple of years for him to convince me to take the first step forward and to, sign up for classes and get into real estate and stuff like that. But he was the person that ultimately kind of pushed me towards it. I have family in California that does real estate, but I was like, I don't know. I was wishy-washy about it at first. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So you figured out, man, I've been in this career for a long time. My kids are starting to get to a point where I'm feeling guilty about not being around more. Right. I want to spend more time with them. And Jeremy's been in your ear like an evil Jiminy Cricket about getting into real estate. You said, all right, I think I'm going to look into this. What did you do to kind of get the ball rolling with getting licensed? Because that was the route you took originally, right? Was Correct. To get your realtor license. like that, Loretta. And what? Maybe talk about that. What was? How do you go from point A, which is I think I want to do real estate, to point B, which is I now have my license and I'm ready to roll?
So I just asked him, where do I go? Where do I start?
Okay.
He recommended me to a place, and I went down there and I just literally walked in and said, I want to be a realtor. I want to take my classes. Where do I sign? And how much is it going to cost?
Okay.
At the time. And
now you said you've had your license now for how long? Four years?
Going on 5 years.
5 years.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe it's a little bit more, I'm assuming by now, but what is a ballpark? If I'm catching this episode, I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to go. I don't really know how to do it, but I know I want to go get my real estate license. What's the time requirement in order to get your licensing, and what all in will it cost you to get that done?
So timeline wise, it took me roughly 9 months, only because this was around the time COVID happened. And when I signed up, the school closed like a week later. So I was in limbo like 2 or 3 months. I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, like
that was super weird.
Yeah, it was just a weird. It was a trippy time.
Did you still go out and say you're a realtor so you could get out of the house and be like, I'm
an essential service,
I'm an essential employee.
Essential employee. Yeah.
So 9 months,
but 9 months are and I mean, I think all in, after you take all your tests and pay your fees and I mean, you're probably every bit of $3,000 if I remember right.
That sound about right, Ted?
It's gone up since my days.
Yeah. So okay, we'll call it $3,000 to $4,000. Then this is in the state of Nebraska.
Correct.
Do you have any other licensing in other states like
no,
Iowa?
Just here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It also depends how many times you got to take the test.
I took it twice.
Ted, how many times did you take it?
I honestly don't know. Probably 7. But I did but I got my broker's test on the first try.
Oh man,
yeah, that's cool.
That was redemption.
Ted is a picture of resilience and determination despite adversity. So, all right. So you're newly licensed, and we'll also talk about real estate investing. But I think the agent side of this, we don't have a ton of agents that start out that way on there. It's kind of either ends up being a combo, or maybe they lean more into investing. But what was your first, say, 6 months like after you got your licensing? So you went through 9 months slugging it out, studying, took your test twice, and you're now licensed agent in the state of Nebraska. What next?
So I was still working at the dealership.
Oh, okay.
So
Double dip.
Yeah, it took a year for me to actually leave the dealership and do real estate full time. I wanted to get, pay off as much debt as I could and be as debt free as possible, because they kind of planned like better have at least 6 or 9 months of, your personal bills taken care of, all this stuff, right?
Yep. The first year does.
Yeah,
suck.
the first year just sucks ass.
Yeah.
But once I left, I just jumped both feet in. I just said, let's go. I was nervous. I was scared because I didn't know what to expect. I mean, you're literally drinking water out of a fire hose. I mean,
because there's so much new information.
There is. And a lot of this stuff, it seems like just really daunting because you've never seen it in this industry. Unless you're like part of a team or have a mentor right off bat, you start second guessing yourself right away. If you're that, if that's just the way you are.
I tell every new agent, I'm like, join a team for your first one or work underneath somebody.
Right. Maybe
you can be their assistant, maybe you can be their showing agent, but don't go in this alone, because I think that there's a higher risk of failure and burnout. You have way more opportunity to grow if you can grow in a really good team, or like partner with somebody.
Yeah,
I did. I was part of a team for 3 months, and there was difference of opinions there, and I just split off on my own.
Okay,
and then I just been like we were talking earlier, raw dogging it since. So
much raw dogging.
Yeah, so much raw dogging. Yeah.
Okay, tell us about your first deal you closed as an agent.
Oh my God. Okay, so I had this out-of-state investor. He's from California. He, found a house online.
Were you like, hey, move to Madison, Nebraska?
No, I didn't. No, he has family here, and he said, hey, I want to invest in Nebraska because it's more affordable. And his cousin had told him all this. And he said, here's his house. I want to, can you go check it out? So I said, no problem. So I called the listing agent, and I said, hey, I'd like to go in there to take some pictures of it. And he says, you can't do that. I'm like, why is that? He says, well, I have to protect my seller. I'm like, okay. I was brand new, right? I didn't know any better. So we ended up doing the deal. We offered him what we offered him and stuff like that. Closed on the deal. And I went to the house to take pictures of it and stuff like that. And this was like in January or February. And I was like, well, I don't want the pipes to freeze. So I turned the faucet on upstairs for the bathroom. Well, there was a crack in one of the pipes. So like it flooded the whole ceiling, and the whole ceiling had caved in. And
no! Yeah, as a result of you turning on the water.
Yes,
was it?
that was my first
coming in hot.
Yeah, my first transaction. Well, then I called the listing agent back and I said, "Hey, man, Like, what's up with that? Like, the ceiling is ruined.
Mhm.
And then he says, well, that's on you, man. That's your job as a realtor. You should have gone in there.
And you're like, you
I'm like,
said I
dude,
couldn't go in there.
Yeah, I'm like, you said I couldn't go
That's
in there.
weird.
And then he said, I never said that.
Oh.
So I'm like, it took everything in me to keep it professional without me just teeing off on this guy. And
it's okay. It's okay to tee off on somebody.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It
I'm
really
starting
is.
to realize that more the longer I do this. Like,
Yeah.
there's some people that need to be teed off on, but yeah, that was my first experience as far as that goes.
How do you handle that? Did you cover the cost?
I did not. So luckily, my buyer, I mean, super chill people, very understanding. I'm like, hey, look, I apologize. His cousin, he knows how to do drywall. So his cousin was like, hey, look, it happens. You're new. We get it. He's like, we can fix this. This is nothing. He's like, we can take care of this ourselves. So his cousin ended up fixing the ceiling himself. I'm sure he charged him some money or whatever, but they ultimately took care of it themselves.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What price point are we talking here?
Oh, at that time it was like $135,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what did you end up with as commission? Do you remember your very first commission check?
2,500, whatever.
2,500
in there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 125. It's 2.5%, so close to 2,500, $3,000. Yeah,
and then you had to give part of that to your broker, right?
Right.
And then
2,500 after you pay your broker out sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay. And there's some. Yeah.
Was that okay? So despite the hiccup there with the water event, how did that feel to get your first commission check? And you're like, okay, I actually can do this.
It's like, cool. I got my money back for what I put into the
paid for my education and all that.
Yeah.
And how long between your first one and then your second, the next deal you closed?
Like a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that normal? I don't really know what your first year agent.
I think that nationally, an agent, it was 2 houses right now?
Something like that. Yeah.
A year?
Yeah. And those are probably people that just carry their license.
It's all average
and maybe buy one once in a while, not through any effort of their own.
Probably
right?
so. Yeah, like referrals and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, let me ask you this. Was the second deal also an investor? Is that kind of how you...
Yes.
Okay. So did you decide that or did it just happen
It
that
just
way?
happened.
Okay.
It just so happened this guy calls up and he said, hey, one of my friends bought a house from so-and-so and they did owner finance on it. I have a cousin that's moving up from Kansas or whatever, and he wants to do the same thing. And I gave him your number. I'm like, okay, cool. So talk to the guy, and we just so happen to have a house for him, and it all worked out pretty easily.
How does an agent get paid when it's an owner financing deal?
That's
it comes out of the initial deposit that's put down, because usually it's a pretty large sum of money that's put down.
Like an earnest deposit, you mean?
Well, in a lot of cases, when somebody's doing seller financing, they're requiring a large percentage.
Okay, so I'm
10% down.
I'm selling a $100,000 property just for round numbers. As an owner, I say, okay, I'll finance 90% of this. I'm looking for a $10,000 down payment. You're saying that basically instead of me getting 10 as the seller, I would instead pay out commissions out of part of that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. That makes
something
sense.
like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then did you kind of continue on at that pace, like one a month, or did things pick up a little bit or slow down, or what did that look like?
The first year, yeah, it was kind of like that, where it was like every other month there was one coming through and things like that, because the original investor from California ended up buying another house, I want to say within that first year or just like after that year. So it just kind of trickled from there.
Mm-hmm.
Second year was a little tougher. And then last year, it's when it kind of picked up for me. But yeah.
Okay. And let's say last year, putting you on the hot seat here, what was like, is it more important? I would assume that it's more important the volume you close, right, than it is the number of deals. Or am I making a wrong assumption there?
Well, I guess it just depends on the price point that you're at. If you're 300,000 or whatever, if you can sell, I don't know, 8 or 9 of those, it just depends on your lifestyle too. Correct?
Yeah, that was my question too, because it's like, yeah, you could have one $500,000 listing, in Omaha, probably what the average price point is going to be like three something for
288 or 286 right now.
Like
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll call it 300 just for round numbers. So an average home for an average homeowner is going to be, $300K, and you're selling investment properties, probably rentals in maybe a little bit lower income area.
Right.
Is that fair?
Correct.
And so, yeah, you would seem like you would have to do like 5 times as many of those as you would. But the difference in the trade-off, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, guys, because you both dealt with investors, but you might have me as a buyer, and maybe I'm going to buy 12 of them from you this year.
Right.
Whereas you have Joe and Susie homeowner, they're going to buy one house every 7 years.
Correct.
So you get your lead in, you close the deal, they're gone. Like maybe you follow up with them in a few years, but it's not like you're getting any repeat business, right? So the lure of dealing with an investor is you do get you make up for the lack of volume in the total dollars by doing a number of transactions that could end up evening that out. Right.
There's also a simplicity factor. Like, don't get me wrong. There's some people who are just really hard to work with, and a lot of times you just kind of end up shying away from them, or they buy so much that you just kind of deal with it. And I got one of those buddies, and but but in the end, generally, like when I'm working with somebody that's out of state, I'm like, hey, let's just do a walkthrough video. Here's my bid, and they're buying it. They're
relying on you to be their eyes and ears.
They don't care about the paint colors, and they don't care about the little minor stuff that you shouldn't care about, because then it gets really frustrating when you work with somebody that wants to look for their own personal home and it's a nice home. It's easy when they're an investor, but if they're not, it's like, oh, it just the paint color is just so hideous. I'm like, yeah, paint it, and it's your dream house. It hits every box. I just don't know if I can deal with this. I know that's so much stress. You're like,
I just want to move in and not do anything.
I guess there's no emotion involved in investment properties. It's all about the numbers, right? Numbers don't lie. The numbers make sense. Then who cares if the wall's hot pink, right? Because you're going to rent it out anyways, and people are always going to need somewhere to live, and the last thing they're going to think of is, okay, this wall is hot pink, I can deal with that. I'll put a NSYNC poster up there and call it good. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Or just paint
slap some agreeable gray paint on that bad boy.
Aging myself there too, but you know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, so
he says he's aging himself, but I think he's the youngest one in the room.
Probably. Definitely the lowest hairline out of all three of us. Okay, so at what point did you decide, what about investing? Who did you talk to, or did you just get comfortable enough in dealing with these out-of-town investors that you thought, if they're doing that, I could probably do this. I see the same houses they're looking at because I'm the one looking at it for them.
So what got me thinking about it was, obviously, being a realtor, you don't have like a retirement plan per se.
Oh, I said that all the time.
So it's like, okay, what am I going to do to secure myself, at an older age? And what am I going to leave my kids behind with?
And how old are you now?
39.
Okay.
I just turned 39, but
it's important. It's because that's when you start thinking about these things. I think
it is. Yeah. Once your knees start to hurt, your back hurts for no reason. That's when you start to think about your future. Seems like
you stretch wrong. You yawn
hard or something.
as I take 4 Advil, because I can't turn my head.
Pounding Advil like chiclets over here.
Oh my gosh,
this neck and head.
It's like every time I want to look at Owen, I gotta turn my whole body and cringe.
That's what she said. Yeah. Okay, so no retirement plan in the realtor biz, and you started thinking about financial security for when you get older.
Right.
Aches and pains are starting to set in. What happened? Like, how did you kind of like bridge the gap between not knowing anything about investing and considering it to like kind of diving in? Was there anybody, or was there a book or a podcast, or is it just a general feeling?
A little bit of everything, really. Like I mentioned Jeremy earlier.
Yeah.
When he got me into real estate and I started working, that was his biggest thing, right? I had this one guy, this one investor that I was helping, and he would just tell me like, I have this many houses. He wasn't like trying to say it to like put me down or anything like that, but just kind of listening to what he was talking about and how he kind of built his portfolio and things like that. I was like, well, man, that's something I can have. That, and like, my folks never had anything like that. My folks were never able to afford to buy a house for us growing up and stuff like that. So then I was like,
and you grew up in an apartment. I thought I heard you say,
we didn't rent a house until we moved to Nebraska. So having that in the back of my mind, I was like, if they can do it, I can do it too. So it was also taking my own self limitations off and just going for it.
Oh, I love that. So you saw it was possible.
Right.
And then the question was, how do you bridge the gap between knowing it's possible and actually executing? This is maybe not a fair question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. Yeah. Your parents, would you say you were close with them, are close with them, or were you?
For a while there, yeah, and then no, and then yes, just like anybody else, I suppose.
Yeah.
But as I got older, I started understanding things more from their side. So
why they were making some of the decisions they made.
Right. And I was like, okay, well, they didn't know any better. It's not an excuse either, but I just learned to forgive.
Yeah.
That was the biggest one for me. And I think after learning how to do that, then it just solidified and it made my mom and I's, relationship even stronger than what it was. Yeah.
Now, did you get any feedback from them about did you say, hey guys, in real estate, I'm kind of getting some traction here. I'm thinking about buying a rental property. Did they chime in about that and tell you why it was a good idea, why it wasn't a bad idea or a good idea?
So my mom never got the chance to see me actually get my license or, start into real estate. She just knew that I was going to do it.
Okay.
But that's as far as I got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, this is cool because it sounds like, Jeremy kind of had a direct or indirect influence on bringing you to the point where you're making decisions to like secure your future,
Right.
build your retirement wealth, those kind of things. So it's so funny. There is always a person, place, or thing that is the catalyst to it. And yeah, that's pretty cool. And we've had Jeremy on in a past episode, and it was, I don't know what number, but I would say probably within the last 30 or 40, right?
Yeah.
That sound right?
Yeah.
Anyway, search in Spotify and give us a 5-star review while you're there.
Maybe John can put that in the show notes.
There we go. Okay. All right. So tell us about the search for your first investment property. What was it like?
It actually just kind of landed on my lap. They were like, hey, so-and-so has these houses. They're willing to hold off on the down payment. Do you want them? And I was like, let's do it. It was just an opportunity that presented itself. And I knew that was my one shot. And I just jumped right in.
Now, did you buy one or more than one?
I bought 2.
You bought 2 right off the bat.
Right off
Same
the bat.
deal.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. And timestamp this for us. How long ago was this?
This was just a little over a year ago.
Okay.
So,
all right. So 2024.
Correct. January 1st, 2024.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All
Right. That's how I began the year.
Coming in hot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they were presented to you. Were you kind of looking at it as like the stumbling block, or maybe the obstacle was, I don't have cash to put 20% down on buying my first property, or I don't want to, or something of that nature, right? Is that kind of
I'd say a little bit of that, but I mean, hell, if someone's going to say, hey, we'll wait for you to put the money down, here's a house, just give me the money down when you have some money down, or sell it.
Yeah. Now, where were these houses located? So I'm assuming in Omaha, right?
Here in Omaha, South O.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, Jeremy Murray was episode 120, 85 episodes ago.
Oh, whoops. Okay, I was a little off. Okay, episode 120. Tune into that because he had some really, really good info in that too. That was a good episode. But okay, so 2 South Omaha single family homes. So you're buying 2 things at the same time that you never even lived in.
Right.
As an owner.
Correct.
Right. So you mentioned you moved to Madison. You didn't become a renter of a home until that point, right? Until you moved to Nebraska.
Correct.
So you'd rented a home, but you've never owned one before this.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean.
Oh, you bought your own
yes,
home.
I've had my house now for a few years, but in terms of like growing up, yeah, we never had a house.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
Growing up wise, were you upset when you came to Nebraska for the first time?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
and now as an adult looking back, was that probably one of the best decisions that's happened to you and your family?
I think my mom knew, like, if I don't get my kids out of here, they're going to end up like my cousins did. Right.
Which was what?
Well, her cousin, one of them anyway, was heavily involved in gangs.
Okay.
I mean, there's kind of a lot of that going on in our family at the time. I mean, just the environment we were growing up around, there you saw a lot of that stuff too. So, I mean, you go to in the LA area, and there's God knows how many gangs down there.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you had you had the proximity to things that could really derail your life in a hurry, right outside your back door.
Correct.
Right. Or your front door. Okay. So you exited Southern California, came here kicking and screaming, and then eventually learned maybe my mom had a pretty good idea in getting us out.
Yeah.
What age did you realize that though?
Oh man, I was probably late 20s.
Okay.
After I had my kids.
So you were hating it all the way up until that point.
Yeah, I always talked about going back to California. I'm like, this sucks. Nebraska sucks. But I think the longer I lived here, I started to meet just really nice people, really nice, genuine people that wanted to see me do good. And that was something I really didn't have. So when I saw that at first, I kind of tripped out because I'm like, what do they want?
What's the angle?
So I was very very distrusting and things like that. But overall, I mean, I think it was, like anybody else, right? The affordability of living here and being able to raise a family and just being, generally safer raising kids and things like that.
Nebraska nice is what hooks you. It's a
think
tractor beam, man. It's hard to escape if you settle down for a couple of years.
Here's the big question. Are you a Californian or are you a Nebraskan?
I guess at this point, at heart, I'm a Californian, man. Like that's a part of me that will never die. That's just there no matter what. Every now and then, certain songs take me back to 1997, Gardena, California, bumping Ice Cube and all those guys. You know what I mean? Tupac, Snoop and all those guys, right? That's what I grew up with, and then I was even, I got into heavy metal, but a part of me still has that inside of me, right? But now thinking back, like I could never live back over there because when I go back over there, I stress out and I'm like, dude, this sucks. Like, I can't wait. Like when I come back to Nebraska, it's like a big sigh of relief because it's what I know now.
I saw a stat the other day, and I haven't validated this, but there was a statistic on a post that I looked at that said California is now the number 4 economy in the entire world. California. they eclipsed Japan. $4 trillion economy in just in the States.
Isn't Texas higher than that though?
No.
I thought it was.
Nope.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and this is a tangent, but I'll do it anyway. There's a movie called Civil War that came out, I think, 2 years ago.
Crazy movie.
Do you remember that?
Oh, I own it.
So yeah, and in that movie, it was basically like a dystopian future state where there was a civil war in the U.S. And at that time, if memory serves, the state of California and the state of Texas had seceded from the U.S. and become their own republic or whatever.
They became their own army. Yeah.
Yeah, they had their own basically militia or army. So they were two of the largest economies, and along with New York in the U.S. But I just think that's a crazy stat. A state, 1 out of 50 states in our country, is the largest economy in the entire world over all other countries.
And it's going bankrupt.
Right. Yeah. So we won't get into the craziness of California politics, but there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack with that whole thing. But okay, so you bought a couple of South Omaha rentals. Tell us what it was like actually closing on those, and then now you own them. Like, what was going through your mind? How did you figure out what to do with regard to managing? Were they both occupied? Were they both vacant?
They were both vacant.
Okay.
The one had a guy that had been living there with his mom for, I don't know, a number of years.
Yep.
And they'd smoked heavily in it and stuff like that. And the carpet was just all nasty, whatever. The other one, the renters, there were squatters in there. And there was just a bunch of stuff left. They busted out all the windows. The thermostat was busted. I mean, it was a nightmare a little bit. But overall, I mean, it wasn't too. Once I got in there, started kind of working on it, it wasn't too terribly bad. It was a little nerve wracking because right after I bought them and I started to have to put all this money into it, I was like, what did I do?
Right, because that's cash out of your pocket now. It's you can't finance all of that, or you didn't finance all of that up front, right?
Right.
So okay. If I could, I want to illuminate something here, because with all the YouTube University out there, a lot of people think they can just become a real estate investor in 60 days, and they're like, all you got to do is buy your first deal, and I'm going to wholesale this and that, and I'm going to do virtual wholesaling, and then the reality is, when you're buying it and you're doing a buy for the purpose of holding it as a long-term rental, you just bought yourself a property management business. You just bought yourself a rehab that maybe you don't have any experience with. Do you have any type of construction in your background?
I do not.
Okay.
That was my
you bought
right there. Yeah.
You bought a fixer-upper, a vacant property, one with squatters potentially in it. And so there's legal issues. There's construction issues. There's a whole bag of cats here.
Oh yeah,
that you basically bought
and there might have been a bad cats in there.
There might have actually been a bag
here's
of
the best
cats.
part. Apparently, the neighbor came out and told me, she says, "Oh yeah, the neighbors that used to live here, they would deal with drugs out of this place. Oh, and by the way, someone got shot in front of the house over here."
I just got one done with those houses. the gangbangers pulled them out of the unit and then shot them 3 times and killed them in the backyard.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. And one of the rooms caught on fire. Like, it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then after I got done, my contractor was there, and that's how he found out. And the contractor was like, the gangbangers came back 2-3 years later, and they wanted to know, because the contractor was working, and they wanted to know if they found anything
in the house,
in the walls, because he stole a whole bunch of money from him.
Oh yeah,
boy. Yep.
Those are fun.
That's probably why he took off and with my money there.
So, I mean, this is interesting. So, all right. So this plops in your lap. You're like, this deal just came along, and they're like, you want it? And you're like, yeah, sure. I'd be dumb not to do this.
Right.
How did you finance the deal?
Owner finance.
Okay. Did they do 100%? Did you have to put any money down?
Did. They said, just give me the money down once you sell it. So, we'll hold off on collecting the money from you. So what I did was I went in there, cleaned the house up, and marketed it and sold it the same way I bought it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
And then I had X amount of money down. I paid the owner then what they were asking down.
All right. Let me unpack this for a second if I could.
Yeah.
So you walked into this deal buying 2 single-family vacant rentals in South Omaha. You did it on 100% owner financing, deferred.
Correct.
Meaning you didn't owe any monthly payments on that until you did whatever you were going to do with it. Mm-hmm. Did they know at the time, the sellers, meaning is what I mean, did they know that you were planning on selling that on a finance? Because it sounds like that's what you did, right?
Yes.
You bought it on owner financing. You sold it on owner financing.
Correct.
Did Jeremy talk you into this strategy?
No, I just I didn't want to have a rental and have to deal with people, because when you sell it on owner finance, if the water heater goes out, whose water heater is that? That's their water heater, not yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't want to deal with it.
Okay.
And I just want to sell it, cash for a little bit of money every month and stuff like that, and just go on about my happy life.
All right. So this is a non-traditional way of selling a property.
Right.
If you own it, let's say I want to do what Abe did. I go out and I find an owner.
This is the art of the slow flip right here.
Yes, exactly. So you go out and you find an owner that says, "Hey, I like you. We'll finance the whole thing. Just pay us when you disposition it," which in this case you plan to owner finance it as well. Did they know that at the time? Did they know that's how you were going to do it, or did they think you were just going to list it and sell it?
I don't know. I guess I couldn't answer.
Okay.
They probably had an idea that I was going to do it.
So you didn't engage them with, you're like, "Hey, by the way, this is what I'm doing." You're just like, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna sell these.
Right.
You're gonna get your money." How long did they agree to do that approach? Like, did you have a balloon payment?
I
or
do.
something?
Yeah, for 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah, 2 years. So it'd be this coming January. Yeah.
And did you go into that thinking, I'm going to rehab this and sell it as an owner occupied? Or did you go into that thinking, I'm essentially going to almost do this like a flip and then I'm going to hold the note after? Like, what was the approach there?
Owner finance all day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just wanted to turn it over as is, sell it to another investor probably?
No, just a regular tenant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you do that with a lease option, or what was the mechanics of how you sold it?
So purchase contract and with a lease option to purchase at
An agreed upon price.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So you bought it for this package of 2. What did you buy it for?
They both cost me. Each one was like 93 grand.
93.5
in there. Yeah.
Okay. And so that ended up being what, $186,000.
Right.
We'll call it 185. So 185 purchase. When you went to sell both of them, what I'm trying to arrive at is what was the spread? What did that end up in being an actual like cash flow for you?
Yeah.
Did you talk more about that?
So the one I ended up selling for 145,000.
Okay.
I put about 18 grand into it by the time it was all said and done with monthly payments and all that kind of stuff. The other one I sold for 125. I want to say, and that one I didn't do anything to it really. Just throw the carpet up and have somebody go in there and clean it.
Okay. So if my math is right, so $30K on the second one.
Right.
You said 145 minus 18, so we'll call that 120. What is that? 125ish you made, or 125. So your net on that one was about 40.
In there somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. That sounds pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
How long was the note that you created for the buyer?
So the note that we are on it's a 30-year amortized note.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the whole premise of this is you need to have a down payment though from them, right?
Correct.
All right. Okay. So we're getting into the weeds a little bit on purpose here, but there are laws, specifically the Dodd-Frank Act, which basically regulates on how you can create a seller finance or how you can originate a new loan on a property. How did that come into play, or did it come into play with this whole thing?
Actually, it didn't. It was just a standard purchase contract and a standard lease to, with an option to buy.
Okay, so lease option.
Yeah.
And you said, I will agree to sell you this property at $145,000.
Mm-hmm.
I will, if you execute that option, we're going to consider you a tenant. But like, how does that work? So they're a tenant. You have one lease, and then you have an option agreement that says they can buy.
Correct.
You take an option payment from them of what would that amount to?
So that was 1,025 in there somewhere, and like a portion of that payment goes towards their
Purchase
earnest
price
deposit. Yeah, which then in turn, once that earnest deposit is completed, where the full purchase price of the house, then it just transfers title after that.
Okay, now let's skip to the end here. Do you still own both of these? Or not own, do you still have the note on both of these?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so they have not executed their option to buy.
Not yet. No.
As of yet.
No.
And are you okay with that?
I mean, yeah.
Do you okay, based on the spread that you described, the note that you have with the seller that you bought it from, do you know what your interest rate is with that?
10%.
Okay. And what is your interest rate with your
with the
purchasers?
Yeah, so one is 12,
Okay.
and the other one I made the mistake of negotiating with the guy, and I told him 10% also, not knowing I was getting 10% at the time.
Okay.
Until it was like, hey,
whoops,
what are you doing, man? You're getting 10%. You're charging 10%. I was like, oh, well, shit. I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like I said, this was my first two, so definitely a learning curve there.
Now, I'm just thinking out loud here, but could you not refinance that with, say, a commercial lender at, say, 7.5?
Oh, yeah.
And then keep the spread or improve the spread that you have between the purchaser and the seller you bought it from?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Is that something you're planning on doing?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe? Okay.
Yep, as soon as possible.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've been doing these two properties. You sold them to two different buyers,
Correct.
right? And how long have you had those on the books? About a year?
A little over a year. It took me roughly a month and a half to get rid of both of them.
Okay.
So yeah, about a year now, I'd say, a little over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you think you're making above expenses on a monthly basis, combining both?
Combining both, around $500, $600 a month.
Okay.
For both, yeah.
And are these hard to come by? Like, why not do a whole bunch more of these?
They kind of are.
Okay.
Just because, as you know, with like a traditional lender or, whomever, they're going to want 20% down or at least 20% equity, in there. And sometimes, a lot of folks don't have the cash laying around, or there's just a bunch of stuff you got to jump through. I mean, it's just, or the opportunity hasn't presented itself, right? Where say you run across a property and they're like, okay, we want 100,000 for it. And then you look at it and it needs 50 grand worth of work and the house is worth 150 grand. So they're just very tough to come by, depending on who you have.
I mentioned this so many times, and I mentioned it today already. You really need to read the book, The Art of the Slow Flip. You're already in that realm, and it is literally like a step-by-step, what to do with getting off-market properties, finding private investors that are going to give you the loans for 12%, finding properties that are under 50,000, doing 5-year notes, getting about $895 rent on these properties, and getting about $5,000 down. I mean, you're already doing it, and I think that book would be game-changing for you.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so $500 net in your pocket. You've got a 30-year term on this. You have a 2-year term with your sellers.
Correct.
What's the plan there? Refi?
Refi, yeah.
Okay, and then hopefully your interest rate's going to go down. That'll improve your monthly cash flow.
Will you renegotiate with the sellers though? Like, will you try talking to them, see if they'll extend before you go through this process?
I could, but ultimately I want to put them under my LLC. Just, I guess in my mind, it would just make me feel better. But, just get them off their name, put them in my name. That way, for example, the insurance policy can be under my name or the tenant's name. And then I don't have to go through them if something happens with the house where I'm fighting their insurance and not my, you know what I mean? Like, it's just less of a hassle to deal with stuff like that.
So post-mortem on this, was it worth it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Every bit of it. I mean,
with a nice smirk.
I mean, like I said, it was definitely a learning curve. I mean, at times I did doubt myself. I was like, what the hell did I do? Now I'm dealing with these people fighting over this stupid driveway, so in a way I was still dealing with all that. But again, I go back to my kids, right? My son remembers what the house looked like when I first bought it, because I took them down there and I was showing them the houses. I was all excited and stuff like that. And my kids call it the crack house, rightfully so. But
at their age, they should be like managing it for you.
But it was, because I feel like had I not taken that plunge and just like sat there and let that opportunity go by, I wouldn't know what I know now, of course, and or had the opportunity to meet a lot of these folks that I know now and learn the different strategies behind trying to refinance them and talk to different lenders and learn how they all work, what not to do. You know what I mean? Just a bunch of different things that you learn along the way.
Well, we always talk about the education you get off getting that first deal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's invaluable. And it also builds confidence, and you're going to feel so much more confident in yourself when it comes time to get that next deal.
Well, because the reality is you could have very well just passed on that because you had no experience in it. And let's face it, that's kind of I would call it a hairy deal where like it's not a normal transaction, right? So it's not something you learn about when you go to Randall School of Real Estate or whatever, right? Like they don't tell you how to create cash flow spread based on one note versus another one and owner wraps and land contract. Like that's not typically covered.
They should.
Yeah,
right.
For real.
But now that you've done it, now $500 a month at face value, you may say like, is that really worth it? But on the flip side of that, it's like, that's $6,000 a year that you're adding to your family income. And you've got now a year's worth of experience in dealing with, a tenant buyer, seller finance property. You've got 2 of them. So you did kind of a double dip into that and kind of fast forward or accelerated your experience level. I really like it, man. I think it's cool. Now, knowing what you know now after having a year under your belt with those 2 properties, are you going to change your approach or are you going to try to double down and try to find more of these type of situations?
I'm going to keep doing them because there's definitely people out there that could use that owner finance stuff. Not everyone can go to the bank and apply for a loan and all that stuff, right? There's people out there with plenty of cash that are willing to put an agreement together and, do owner finance, and they're perfectly fine with it.
Now, here's a question for you. Are you still, with how you have these contracts set up, are you still able to use depreciation as a way to offset some of the tax liability?
Not if it's under the original owner's name, but once they're in your name, yes.
Okay. So that'd be one potential like chink in the armor with this approach, right? But there, interestingly, we had Caffeine and Cap Rates, which Ted wasn't in attendance today, but
Sick kid.
Carson. Carson. We had a gal that attended for the first time today named Jennifer, totally spacing on her last name. She goes by Jen. But she has a really unique strategy. Like she does nationwide investing, but she will lock up a property. And she was talking specifically about Tennessee, how she found some deals in Tennessee, got them under contract, sold them on a wrap mortgage, and was able to basically she tries to get 10% down of the end purchase price that she's offering to the tenant buyer, right? So she has a chunk of cash, which it sounds like yours was not a whole lot, right? No, it was more of like a deposit or correct, yeah. So a larger chunk of cash. She shoots for 10%, depending on the price point of the property. She may or may not get it, but at least 10 grand. And that's a lot harder to walk away from, and a lot better for you as the person on the hook for it if they decide to bail, right? Because a tenant buyer, they could just walk and they're going to be like, big deal, it's $1,000, who cares? Right.
Yeah, these guys that gave me the big chunk of money down, you walk away from that, then it's no different than like a buy here pay here lot, right?
Yeah,
those guys, you give them what, $3-4 grand down on a car that's worth $3 grand, and then you're still making payments on it. You walk away from it, they just go repo it and sell it again.
Right.
I had an old buddy that opened up multiple ones. Those around Missouri, and I think he had 3 or 4 of them. But he said they put a tracker in every car when they took it on. They said on average 2 to 3 times those cars would come back.
Oh wow, they'd repo them that many times,
and it always was paid off after the first time.
Yeah, so it was just
profit.
Yeah.
And then in that book I suggested you, they talked the same thing. They said that on average that the houses will not close is 3 times. Oh, really? And you're going to get those deposits, and then it's going to, after the first or second time, it's going to be completely paid. After the first 5 years, it'll be paid off no matter what. And then you're going to get that house back, and you're going to get the house back over and over again.
Oh man.
And he's like, I don't touch it. I don't do any work. I don't care if they fixed it up or nothing. He goes, if I fix it up, I'll charge more for it. He goes, but usually if it's screwed up and there's plumbing issues or what, I don't care. I sell it just how it is, no matter what. I don't even touch it. I don't clean it out, nothing.
Huh.
Yeah, there's always someone that can do that, or someone has an uncle or cousin.
The dirtier it is, the more excited they get. They think that there's a better deal.
Right.
Now, what else have you learned from being involved for 5 years now in the transactional side of real estate sales, and also having a couple of these, rental / owner financed properties that you owned and dispositioned? Like, what are some other things that you've picked up just from being in proximity to other people that are doing deals?
Oh man,
I know that's probably a large question, but
I'd have to sit here and think about it for a little while. But I guess, if we're just talking habits or, things I picked up, just be more organized, keeping a closer eye on how much money you're spending on your rehab. And just because you think something looks nice doesn't mean someone else is going to like it either, right? You're like, oh, this is a nice light fixture. Not everyone's going to like it, right? Like I said, I can sit here and just go on.
Yeah. Well, I guess, have you picked up any other investing strategies or approaches that sound like something that you think you're going to maybe latch onto?
Yeah. So as far as that goes, instead of keeping the owner finance, just something short term, just wholetailing stuff. You buy clothes on it, you make a few grand, you flip it over to someone else, and then you just let it go. Because with these ones that I have, I try to refinance them, fairly quick after I bought them. But what I didn't know is they have to be seasoned for at least a year before you can even think about that. And that was something I didn't know. So that's why now it's where I'm just like, okay, now I can actually do it and things like that. But before that, depending on the type of loan you're getting and, things like that, you have to have a rental agreement for so long before you can even go to the bank and apply for a loan for it.
Okay. If you don't mind, we'll dig into that. I'm going to poke some holes in this. Okay.
All right.
So now, with my view on this, or my lens that I'm looking at it, I have a lot of different banks of various sizes that I've worked with over the years on various types of properties and situations. So let's take that into consideration here. So my view on this is based on the amount of time I've been doing it.
His age.
And well, I could be 50 and just starting out, Ted. Yeah.
Based on his
suck it.
Based on his decades and decades of experience.
2 decades. Okay. Well, I have 2 decades of experience.
Hey, that's why you're such a good podcast host.
I would say that how many lenders have you talked to would be my first question. Because you got Heisman when you went in and said, I want to refi these. And they're like, nice try.
Pretty much.
You got to eat it for a year.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. So did you go to one lender?
Oh, no.
Okay. How many did you talk to?
At least 8.
Okay. Now, if I could here. So it sounds like you put these in your personal name, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have any regrets about that?
No.
Could you have bought it in an LLC?
Yes.
Have you talked to any commercial lenders?
I have not. So these first two that I got, the ones we're talking about, yes, they were in my name with, the land contract with the owner and all that.
Yep.
But I did buy one that I put under my LLC.
Okay.
So that was the third one that I bought in like less than a year.
Okay.
That one's a whole different story. I think I told Ted about that one. But no, I guess I've never even thought about talking to a commercial lender.
So in general, what I see a lot, and Ted, I think you would probably agree with this, is the thing that attracts most people to buying a property in their own name that they're going to hang on to for any period of time is 30-year conventional financing. And you can get generally at least a point lower in pricing on your interest rate, right? So it's generally cheaper. So the interest rate that you're paying on is generally a point less, and it's amortized over 10 years more. So your payment overall is going to be probably not an insignificant amount less than a commercial note. However, commercial lenders are way, way more flexible, and it varies wildly depending on which one you talk to about seasoning requirements, and even if there is any. Because, I don't know about you, Ted, but I've bought properties before that I've closed on and then refinanced a week later in a commercial note, and for more than I bought them for.
The only time I've done that is when I had bought through liquid lending, got my hard money loan, and then got my commercial loan after that.
Yeah. So that's one thing I just wanted to add for color commentary there. And I'm not saying you should do that or would or whatever.
It's good advice.
Yeah. So what I hear a lot of people that are starting out, maybe they have a small handful of residential properties. They bought them all in their own name because of the fact that they can get 30-year financing on it at a lower rate. And my counter argument to that is, yeah, but like all of the restrictions and all of the pain and suffering that you have to go through to get the loan in the first place. So it's kind of like tripping over pennies to pick up dollars, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would just maybe the next one, consider taking it down in your LLC, and then you can go right to commercial debt and you can shop them. I mean, you may have one commercial lender that looks you in the eye and they say, you cannot do this without 12-month seasoning. And you totally believe them because they believe it.
Because that's that one bank's rules.
That's that one bank's rules. And they tell you, oh, no, they're all like this. I can tell you for a fact that it is the Wild West out there in commercial lending.
Okay.
Like you may find another bank that's like, yeah, we don't require that at all. Like refi next week.
There's certain banks that they have so many, like, hey, we do not want any more single families. We don't want any more families. We
they
don't
get
want
overweight.
Stripples. Yeah, and like we used to have a bank we did a ton of business with. I'm not going to name drop them, and they were like the known, like everybody we knew went to this specific bank. But then they had so many loans in that specific category. They raised their rates up 3-4%, and then they pushed all those people up. They put crazy stipulations on it, unless it was the people that had $10 million in assets sitting there, and they would still work with them and do special things. You got to just keep on shopping. I think at one point, Owen, with his multifamily that he's doing in Branson, I think you said you talked to over 80 banks.
No, 108. 108. And I have a spreadsheet that'll tell you all the brokers and all the banks we talk to.
So don't give up.
Anybody that tells me they're like, no, you don't understand. I've talked to a bunch of banks. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You have not talked to enough banks, because there is a bank out there. And this one was a regular bank in St. Louis that did the loan that we wanted, that everyone else told us they couldn't do because of COVID and, the post-war interest rate spikes and all that. Like it was just liquidity crisis, blah, blah, blah. We got told no 107 times before we had a yes.
I had a bank that worked with me just because of the REIA, and they wanted to tie their name in with me with a REIA.
Yep, there you go. And this is a case in point about how much different commercial lending is than regular conforming, Fannie Freddie, type product. This isn't, the school on how to do this, but consider that, right? Because when you think you've talked to enough banks, you're just getting started. Like if you want to do something and other people have done it and you keep getting told no over and over again, it just means you got to hit the phones more or get referrals to, strong referrals to other lenders. So
Abe, I've never asked anybody this, but you're pretty new at the real estate investing side. It's fair to say, right?
Right.
I mean, you've got an awesome thing going on right now, but you're still, getting your feet wet.
Right.
I know that Owen gets these messages, or I get these messages quite often and say, hey, let me pick your brain. Let me ask you some questions. Is there any burning questions that you have that we can answer for you? Like something that you're trying to figure out in your business, a next step you're trying to make?
No,
like reversing the table?
I think you kind of answered that question without me even asking it, like with the commercial lending. I never even thought of that.
That's Owen. He sees your the thing you need to work on. He nails it. Right?
It's only because I've been there. Like, you know what I mean? I've screwed up so many times that like sometimes the things that are obvious to me are only because I have the benefit of hindsight because I've been doing this for so long.
Yeah.
Right. But no, that's great. Now, you touched on briefly your third property that was not part of the original 2-pack that you bought.
Right.
2-pack.
Yeah.
See what I did there? California. What up? What was the third property like? And tell us about the deal.
Yeah, remember Owen's from small town Iowa. So.
Whatever, man. I had all the West Coast rapper CDs back in the day.
Grandmaster
right?
Flash. Yeah.
Ice Cube. I watched Friday. Like I'm hip, man.
I was more of a Too Short
The
guy.
Wood. I remember that movie.
I remember having a guy break into my college dorm and stealing every Too Short album I had of my
Oh
CD.
man.
Just to spite you because he knew it was your favorite.
I think it was like a best friend, and not a best friend, but I think it was a friend or a roommate, and they thought that they felt bad busting all my CDs, so they went and picked out all my Too Shorts.
Or they were just tired of you overplaying the same songs, and they said, "Well, we're just going to delete these from Ted's playlist."
That thought never went through my head.
All right, third property. What do you got?
So the third property was a result of a buyer backing out on the property after it was already under contract with another investor.
Okay.
And it was one of those.
No, this wasn't your listing though, right?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
That's another off market. And consequently, this house was right behind the first two that I bought. So there was one, and then a triplex, and then this house, and this house is right behind that.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
very strange coincidence.
It is. And they were like, hey, so that guy's backing out. I thought he was going to do it. And I'm like, look, I told you if he didn't buy it, I would buy it. I give you my word that I would, because that's how sure I was this guy was going to buy it. Right. So I'm like, well, I already gave him my word. So I ended up buying it myself. And it was one of those things where it was like, hey, so-and-so, do you want to give Abe a loan? And they're like, how long? This long. Sure. Why not? Okay, let's do it. And that's how that went, but it was supposed to be refinanced in a certain amount of time. And then that's when I started finding out, holy crap, I need to have these houses for a year. And my short-term loan is only for this long. And started figuring out it's not as easy as it sounds. It's easy to get a personal loan from someone, right? But then when it comes to paying them back and having to get it refied and all that, that's where it gets real tricky, because they ask for so much stuff that I had no idea they were going to ask for, like organization of your LLC and things like that.
Your articles of organization,
articles of organization,
operating agreement, all that.
Well, it gets really scary too if you're a brand new realtor, because you got to show that you've had income for 2 to 3 years,
right, as
a realtor before you can start getting your investments. Luckily, you're hitting that 4 to 5 range now. But.
And that was another thing too. They're like, dude, like your last year sucked. I'm like, thanks for reminding me. Like
this just in.
Wow, like it's like that, huh? But like I said, and that's how that one went. And that one, again, I got rid of it in about a month and a half. Did a light rehab on it and sold it on owner finance. And I ended up having to actually get rid of that house.
Okay.
And I actually lost money on it, because I needed to pay back the person that loaned me the money. So it's like Christmas, beginning of the year, get kicked in the nuts with this one. And then it's like, all right, just move on. But it stings a little bit, because I'd never lost a chunk of money like that, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of a lot of money. And when you're not expecting it, you're like, shit, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That sucks. Now, okay, let's do a thought experiment here. So if I'm hearing you, it sounds like you fell kind of ass backwards into 3 properties where you got owner financing and didn't really have to come out of pocket.
Right.
Now, I'm going to go on one tangent here, and then we'll double back to this. Yeah. So the one thing is, being an owner of a hard money lending business, one thing that I see a lot of new investors make the mistake on is they think, okay, buy a deal with hard money. And typically, like ours in particular, you're going to be dealing with a 6-month note or maybe 12-month. So the intent there is not to give you long-term financing. It's, I'm going to give you this money. You're going to do whatever you're going to do to this property, and you're either going to sell it or you're going to refinance out. And what the mistakes that I see commonly done with investors that maybe either A, have never done it before, or have only done it a couple of times and they don't know what they don't know, or B, it's somebody that got out over their skis on something and the rehab went way out of control. It took way longer than they thought it would, et cetera. But what we've started to really scrutinize more is asking the question of the borrower. If you came to me and you said, hey, Owen, I want to get a hard money loan. Here's the property. My plan is to refinance this out at month 4 or month 6. And then something goes sideways with that, or you start running out of money because you didn't execute on the business plan. The budget got out of control. It took longer. You had a contractor rip you off. There's so many different things that can happen. So the question we like to ask is, what is your plan to pay this loan back? And do you have enough cash reserves to cover the payments if things don't go according to your business plan?
Right.
And that is a key thing to keep in mind. And we ask that not just for selfish reasons, because we obviously want to get the money back and have our payments made to us, but it's also getting the borrower in the right frame of mind to be able to successfully execute on their plan for it.
Right.
And if they don't understand that, oh, I need to set aside X number of dollars to make my hard money loan payments. Oh, by the way, also the utilities, taxes, insurance, lawn care, snow removal, all the stuff, right? You have a big monthly nut when you're carrying a hard money loan. And
Right.
I know we're not talking about hard money with you, but you still have monthly payments
Right.
before you can sell it. So
I know all about that nut. Trust me.
yeah, it likes nuts. Yeah, but that's one aspect of getting into deals like this where it doesn't go maybe how you thought it would, and you have to be able to withstand some punches there.
Right.
Right. But coming back to the owner financing portion of what you're talking about. So you said these kind of just came across your desk and you were like, I'd be kind of dumb not to do these. I'm going to go ahead and buy them. You had another one come up that was right around the same neighborhood. You said, I'll buy that too.
Right.
Let's try and break this down a little more and say, I want to do more of these deals. What do you think the approach is to finding people that are willing to finance you like that? So
That's a hard one.
That's
Yeah,
the question.
a hard- yeah.
So how, if you really want to do this, you need to know how to do it.
Right.
And if you know how to do it, you have to break it down into actionable steps.
Correct.
And this is something we never brought up on the podcast before. Let's do it on the fly here, Ted. You got any ideas?
Well, I mean, I would love to say that every deal I find is owner finance, but it isn't. And honestly, I'm dealing with a potential owner finance deal right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so hard to not take it, but I walked away from it and sold it
Okay.
today.
You got it done?
Yeah.
Is this the one I walked through with you?
Yes.
In Bellevue?
Yeah. Somebody we had on a podcast quite a while, how Richmond's taking that property.
Nice.
I'm making my commission as a real estate agent, but there was the opportunity to have some owner financing option for a couple months while I rehabbed it. And it was like a lot of deep soul diving not to take this deal.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it was just, I got some other projects I need to make sure I finish. And this isn't my main focus right now. So
Any regrets about inking the deal?
yes, lots. Because there's a ton of money on the table there.
Yeah.
But in the end, I can get this quicker money that it's going to pay me in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And probably a sixth of what I would have gotten. But in the end, I'm moving on and I can work on my main goals, which my main goals are getting out of holding real estate, getting into my next phase of life, which I think is going to be assets that I don't need my hands on, and which will be storage units and whatnot. And I need to just keep my focus here. But yes, I think that those opportunities come, but they come with personal referrals.
Okay.
Or older people that have owned properties for a long period of time that have those properties paid off.
Okay.
So I guess if I was looking for owner finance deals, I would be hiring a company to find properties where people have lived in them for over 20 years that potentially could be paid off and don't have loans, and maybe focus my efforts that way.
Okay. How would you execute on that?
How so?
Well, okay.
Like, how would I get that deal done?
All right. I'm going to give you my thoughts on this.
Because are you just talking about how I'm going to ask for the deal?
I'm more interested in how do you generate a funnel that you can vet potential leads that come in of people that have paid off properties or notes or properties that they're willing to do financing on.
It's going to be that 20 plus year person, and you're going to go in there and you're going to tell them exactly what their plan is. You're going to talk to them about how they can avoid capital gains, heavy tax bills.
Okay. I'm going to start at the top of the funnel, then we can talk about execution. Okay. So the top of the funnel is, how do you even know who to talk to? That's the real question.
Yeah.
You have to get the people first.
List
right?
source.
Okay. So this is the thought experiment. So if I want to do this approach, I need more leads, because you had 2 opportunities to do this and you bought both of them.
Right.
Right. So the only thing limiting you to doing this more is what?
Just getting to know more investors,
Getting more leads.
properties. Yeah, getting more leads. Yeah.
So this is the top of the funnel. So the top of the funnel, if you want to fill it, what comes out of the bottom is going to be a lot less than the number of on the top, right? So this is common sense, right? So you have to, it takes X amount of leads to get X amount of prospects. And then out of those prospects, it takes X amount of those to get an actual deal out of, right? So that's kind of the classic sales funnel. So to generate leads on that, and I have never tested this. This is just me talking out of my ass a little bit. But what I would probably do is, to Ted's point about ListSource, ListSource is a list provider where you can go out and you can buy a list of properties that have X, Y, and Z criteria. You can pick them. You could say, I want to know every paid off property in Douglas County, which is half of Omaha or 3/4 of Omaha, and then Sarpy County, whatever. So your county assessor and your title companies are typically going to have the ability to pull data on all of the properties out there that do not have an existing mortgage, right? That's your target. So let's say I'm like, all right, I want to find this. I'm going to go out and get a list provider. I want to know every property that is paid off in Omaha today. And you get a list. Let's say there's 10,000. That's probably low, honestly. Let's say there's 10,000 of those properties. Now, let's take this a step further. So you have 10,000 properties. Of those 10,000 properties, there's probably a big chunk of those that aren't even going to qualify as a decent rental or for whatever you're trying to do. Maybe they're in Elkhorn and they're $5, $6, $7, $1 million, $1 million, right? So you can filter it down then to ones that fit your price point and the area that you want to invest in. And then once you have that, that's your list. And then you can decide how you want to approach marketing to those people or reaching out to them. It could be direct mail. It could be cold calling. It could be door knocking. It could be any of the car salesman approaches that you take to generate leads, right? Cold calling is a tried and true way to do it. So once you have your leads, you work the leads down to the criteria that you're looking for. And then you start a campaign of just, starting marketing and do it consistently. And then you start getting those leads coming in. It's more of a system than an accidental thing. And then you can start working them, and then you can start dispositioning them, putting them under contract, those kind of things. So that would be my approach. And title companies can help steer the way with that too. Like you could pull a list and say, what are all the cash transactions that have happened from 1990 or 2000 to 2025? I don't know if they'll have that data, but they're certainly a source of data. And then you can also go, like to Ted's point, to ListSource or any other list provider out there. So that's a more targeted way to approach that and more way to fill the top of your funnel so that you can get actual deals out of it.
Instead of just going out there spraying and praying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've never tried this, but that is how I would approach it if I wanted to generate leads. Figure out a marketing channel that makes sense, buy the list, vet it, boil it down to the stuff you actually want to buy, and work your list. So little bonus golden nugget. Not usually run on this episode, but
yeah.
Okay. So, Abe, you had a little bit of consternation about bringing up that third property. But we have a section that Ted and I always call failing forward. Do you have anything that's happened in your real estate journey here that hasn't gone according to plan, and maybe something that you wouldn't take back because you learned pretty good lessons along the way?
Like recently, or just anything in general?
In life, yeah.
That first house where the ceiling flooded and the whole thing caved in.
Yeah.
Not to listen to the listing agent. Like, I'm not saying go break the rules and don't, any of that kind of stuff, but just like, that's your job. You're allowed to do that. Always ask questions, I guess. I should have asked, like, hey, is this normal? Can I not go in there? You know what I mean? I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't question it.
How would you handle that exactly today?
I just go to the house.
Well, you can't access it without their approval.
Well, right. But like, I'd ask them why. What's the reason? And then I would approach my broker like, hey, I called this person. They said I couldn't go in. I'd tell them what I was told and see what we can do about it.
Is there
am I dumb here? Why would a listing agent not let someone in the house to look at it for a potential buyer? Why?
No clue. Unless they were hiding something. I don't know.
I think it comes down to the seller, and you have to respect the seller's wishes in the end. And in your situation, you should be putting something in writing because you walked it the first initial time, right?
No.
Oh, so then
I went to the house, and I don't even think I went to the house until it was almost closing. And that's when I figured out there was a busted window, by the way. And I'm like, hey, there's a broken window. And
you need
they
it
were
secured.
Like, we'll take care of it. And all they did was take the broken glass out of the frame, and that was it.
Okay, hang on. Did they say no showings?
No, none of that stuff.
I just don't.
Like I said,
I don't understand.
I was brand new into the business. I didn't know any better.
Sure,
you know,
yeah.
And your client wanted it that bad, and it was a good enough deal.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so they said, we'll take it, whatever.
Exactly.
We'll figure it out.
So
you're like, bad news, I flooded everything. They're like, that's fine.
So
yeah,
I guess
they were.
I guess
a little more pissed than that way.
in this situation, though, I think I'd start putting some stuff in writing. Hey, the seller's agent doesn't allow access. In this case, I'm going to protect myself, and because you had a 3-day walkthrough in there, which is legally in your contract,
Right.
And if they don't abide by that, then you can go to
Their broker.
You can go to their broker, and anything. Then, if you're still not getting access, and your client really wants it, then I'm going to be doing an addendum of some sort, saying that we're not responsible for anything that is not in the pictures that we see.
Okay.
Something just to kind of protect yourself, because in real estate and being a real estate agent, putting everything in writing is the only way you protect yourself. Even if they don't sign it, if you and your client sign it and you show that you sent it to them, then at least the effort was put in there.
Okay. Well, this is good impromptu tips from Teddy. You have something else?
One question I always like to ask is, between, doing 5 years of real estate, your investing background, have you found or seen anything that's completely crazy, something that's radio worthy in a property?
I had a person go into one of the houses I was showing and try to set fire to it.
While you're in it?
Like right when I got there, yes.
Like a Molotov cocktail?
No, they were in one of the rooms just trying to set the carpet on fire. I don't know what they're...
What?
Yeah. I pulled up to the house and I saw this person go in, and I was like, okay, it was probably another realtor that showed up at the same time as
So
I
they went
did.
through the front door?
They went right through the front door. And I get in there and I'm like, hey, are you not supposed to be here? And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Apologizing profusely. She leaves. My clients are pulling in as this lady's leaving the property. And I just told them, hey, look, there's this chick in here. Like, I don't know who she is, right? Well, call the listing agent, let her know what happened. She called the police, did a report and all that kind of stuff. After we saw the house, it turns out she came back later and they caught her trying to set fire to this house. And she was like a known pyro or something like that.
Wow.
But yeah.
Just yesterday, I had one of my midterms move out, and they did somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000 in damage to the house that we're fixing right now before we list it. But they had the audacity to come there yesterday, and they haven't turned the keys in yet either. I didn't know this until yesterday.
The
midterm.
The midterm tenants didn't turn in the keys?
And I didn't know this. I just learned this from the property manager the other day.
Okay.
And so the contractor's there, and he said that they came to the door and they were asking for the bed frames. And this is a furnished rental. And they're like, well, they're kind of ruined already because they had their blood stains in there from whatever happened. And the mattresses are nasty. They stole my pillow. They stole all my sheets already. And why not take my beds and bed frames? I'm like, no, I'm staging this damn property, because the contractor's like, I didn't know what to tell them. I'm like, this isn't their stuff, man.
Are you pressing charges?
I mean, if they don't pay it, it's going to go to collections, but I don't think there's any way in hell that they're going to be able to afford the amount of fees that have coming out of this. And I'm not even charging them for all the stuff they ruined in the kitchen, none of my dishes were there, none of the pots and pans were there. Everything is just trashed. And so I'm still charging them like $7,000, but that's just like, it's going to take just to get the place up on the market for sale.
Man. Yeah.
So frustrating.
No, thank you.
That adds up quick too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you start looking at little things here and there, and it's like, oh, there's $5,000, or $7,000.
Well, when it's furnished rental, it's a whole other, I mean,
I bet.
Oh my gosh, so frustrating.
All right, Abe, let's zoom out for a minute. Yeah. So let's say 5 years from now, we're looking back and checking out your real estate activity from now to then. What's your situation look like then? Do you own more of these owner financed properties that you're collecting monthly cash flow and arbitraging basically between the buy and sell notes? Mm-hmm. Or do you have rentals? Are you flipping? What's your business?
So I'd say a little bit of everything, really. I mean, primarily some rentals, still doing owner finance, and eventually down the road, I'd like to own a fourplex.
Why a fourplex?
Well, I always said I want a couple of duplexes, but rather than having two in two different spots, just have a fourplex, one spot, I guess. But I think that once you
I
go
have an
bigger,
eightplex, a fiveplex, and a fourplex for sale. You just let me know.
This may be timely because I just listed 2 duplexes on the same lot today. So I feel like this is fortuitous.
It wasn't with me, so I don't know I don't know who he listed that with. So.
Yeah.
No, I guess the reason on the fourplex is because from my little bit of knowledge that I have, anything bigger than that, you need like this whole thing. It's different insurance, different, fire alarm system for an apartment building and all that kind of stuff. And those are things I don't want to deal with, truth be told. And I'm not saying the fourplex is easier, but I think there'd be less red tape that goes with
Well,
it.
you don't have to work with a commercial lender if you keep it under 5 units. So.
Well, you can still work. Yeah, that's true. You can still get a residential loan, but in our guidance to him earlier, commercial lending is the way to go.
Yeah.
Everybody eventually ends up in commercial lending.
They do.
Everyone.
They do.
That's in real estate at any given time. It's just people are like trying to milk it and say, I want to get 10 properties financed in a residential. The downside is the mortgage is in your name, the insurance is in your name,
liability.
You have liability. There's that, but you can get an umbrella policy and so on and so on. We won't go into the weeds on that, but that's generally what we're looking at. But yeah, commercial debt gives you more options. But no, I like that, man. So some flips, maybe some rental properties, a fourplex. Do you have plans in place to execute on this big picture, or are you working on that right now?
I'm still working on that right now.
Yeah.
I just closed another property last Friday. Because earlier you asked, like, do you have a plan for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my plan is, okay, it'll be ready next week. Try to get, because I advertise a lot on Facebook.
Okay.
So I get a lot of people from there. That
I think Facebook's going to sponsor us soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, and that's kind of how I built that. That's where I get a lot of my buyers from.
Okay.
I don't like pay any kind of money for advertising. It all just comes through there.
Now, do you do Facebook ads?
I do not.
Okay, so you just advertise in Facebook Marketplace.
I don't do Marketplace either.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I did was I figured
You're
out
just raw dogging it in Facebook.
Yeah. So what I did was I figured out the 2 Spanish speaking Facebook pages that were like kind of popping off and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I just put them on there, right? Owner finance, here's a house, this is the area and all that. And I don't like hide anything, right? But I don't put everything out there either. Like, okay, here's what it takes. I'm like, message me for info. And I just have a bunch of people reaching out for information. And if I don't, and a lot of times, I like to set a meeting with them so I can go in depth with them more, because it's just hard to explain either via message or even on a phone call. They're not going to grasp everything, right? So I'd rather have them sit in front of me. So in case some questions come up, they can ask them right there on the spot too.
Abe, so much fun information. I think that the people will get a lot out of this in regards to what deal should I do first? What mistakes am I making? What things am I doing right? And what things am I not looking at that I'm probably passing over? And I think that that's a lot of the things that we're getting out of this interview today. Mm-hmm. Let's get into our world-renowned OT with
Owen and Ted. My God.
What? These are some of the best questions that we come up with every single week. And sometimes we do switch them up, just so you know. Just be prepared for this. All right. Owen's got the first question for you.
First question, Abe, hot off the press. You got a book simmering around in that big brain of yours. What's it going to be about and or titled?
Breaking the mold.
Okay. Mold as in black mold? Sorry, bad pun.
So I think just because you grow up a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way you have to live your life.
Got it. Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah, that's so kind of like breaking the generational cycle habits and cycle of not buying assets. And
right.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's great. Ted, what do you got for number 2 here?
We are on the Abe Garcia podcast.
Mm-hmm. World famous.
You can interview anyone in the world today. Doesn't need to be real estate related. Who's the one person you want to interview? And if you can ask any question, what are you going to ask?
Robin Williams.
Ooh. Yeah. Okay. He's RIP, but yeah, he's a legend. Mm-hmm. What would you ask Robin?
How'd you push through the hard days? What kept you going?
Didn't go too well.
Well, he did for a while.
Okay, what kept you going as long as you did,
Yeah, man. Like, I think it's so sad. Like, he was a legend and did so many things for film and shows and comedy and just overall. And like, I obviously never knew the guy, but yeah, it was a sad day when that dude got checked out of the picture of celebrities.
Yeah. I was just watching a video on Chris Cornell this morning.
Oh man,
and I'm just sitting here thinking, why? I mean, there's so many, like, that whole grunge Seattle era.
They just, I mean, it was Kurt Cobain, like Chris Cornell, Stone Temple Pilots, Scott Weiland.
Yeah,
like all my favorite garage bands.
Yeah, Linkin Park lead singer.
Chester Bennington,
Yeah, I mean, like, you just keep on going down. And, I was listening to, the lead singer from Smashing Pumpkins. And he was
Billy Corgan.
Thank you, Billy Corgan. He was doing an interview, and he was just talking about how he's like, all of us singers are wired completely different. He goes, and we have an issue balancing our right brain and our left brain. and he was talking about how he thinks that this is a common issue between singers, because he goes, we're not people that go out and can like promote ourselves, and we're artists, but there's people come in and try to change us to be this person that we're not. And he goes, honestly, he goes, and I experienced myself, is what he said. And he goes, cocaine was the only thing that could really balance our left and right brains. And he thinks that this was a kind of like an epidemic that happened between singers in general. And he was talking about how this was affecting the world. And he also said that Kurt Cobain was the most talented artist in history.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Food for thought, people.
A great interview on Joe Rogan. You guys should listen to that.
So if you're a garage band grunge singer, lay off the coke. Just deal with all the mood swings you have. All right. So you are at the end of the road here, Abe. Super sad. We're going to be entering the funeral home. Who's going to be delivering your eulogy? Any parting thoughts? What do you think they're going to say about you? What do you hope they're going to say about you?
Hopefully all good things. He cared a lot. He was kind of an asshole at times, but that's because he, cared passionately for those around him. Wanted to, see those near and dear to him do good and even better than him. And he wanted to see his son do better than he is doing at his age.
Who's saying those words?
Well, my daughter. Yeah. Because they say as a dad having a daughter, your daughter's a feminine, extension of you as a masculine version, right? Obviously. But hopefully her, I can't really picture anyone else off the top of my head right now saying that. So,
awesome.
So I want you to kind of think in this mindset here. I want you to think about the mentor that had the biggest impact on your life, dead or alive. And it can be somebody that you just listened to, or because somebody that was actually in your life, or it could be a coach that you hired, whoever that person is. I want you to speak directly to them, like they're listening to you, or saying, sitting across the table, like you're gazing into Owen's eyes right now.
This is really wordy,
and it's that person. So, what are you going to say to them, and how would you thank them, and what did they do for you?
That's a tough one for me, honestly. And I say that because I've learned so much from a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I would have to thank Jeremy. Had he not seen my potential and getting the hell out of where I was and seeing how unhappy I was at the time, and just kind of kept nudging me there for a while to make the jump, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be sitting here in front of y'all. I wouldn't have learned what I learned now. I hired Wyatt Simon, to be my coach, and same thing, just kind of a gentle nudge. I was feeling sorry for myself just like 2.5 weeks ago. Like, man, I got these houses I can't refinance, all this stuff. And he sat there, he stood there, he actually just stood there. He's like, all right, let's analyze this. Let's go through it. Right. And he helped me dissect the issue, and rather than let me go down my pity party, which is easy for me to do, unfortunately, I think for a lot of us,
we all get him chose.
You know what I mean? Like, he offered solutions rather than playing into it. He said, you know what, here, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And here we are 2.5 weeks later, and I have another house. You know what I mean? So like, just something that I wouldn't have been able to achieve without, like I said, Jeremy kind of nudging me into it, and then having Wyatt there to guide me along the way, and just everyone around the office, man, that, when I have a question about something, or I'm not sure, or just listening to everyone's, not being nosy, but just, just like, this happened to me, or then just, in conversation, right? How they share little tidbits of knowledge and kind of what they would do, and just sharing that along.
So Ted and I are firm believers in this, but this just goes to highlight the whole belief that the only limitations you have are the quality and quantity of the people in your life.
1,000%.
So, networking gets frowned upon, or people are like, oh yeah, networking, I'm a good networker or whatever. But you really have to be intentional about that and put into practice a schedule where you're going out meeting with new people. Because if you never met Wyatt, you wouldn't have had that conversation.
Right.
You wouldn't have maybe heard what he had to say about that as a suggested solution for your situation. If you hadn't met Jeremy and had meaningful conversations about what your trajectory in life is, and what your current happiness state is, and what you're missing out on with spending time with the family, and he put the idea of real estate in your head, either directly or indirectly. If those conversations had never happened, then you would be probably doing the same thing you were doing 5 years ago, right? And maybe not happy, and maybe you're just still on the hamster wheel of working for the man and putting in 50 hours a week. And then all of a sudden, poof, your 14-year-old is now 18 and moved out, and she's in college or wherever, and you missed it. And so there's certain like catalyst points during your conversations that you have in everyday life that can wildly diverge the path that you are on. And unless you put an actual framework around that and putting effort behind networking with new people and getting different perspectives and different contacts and different solutions to everyday problems that you're dealing with, you are going to be coexisting with your past self.
Right.
So I love that. And that's really cool that you're giving kudos out to people that, had more or less an indirect, mentorship with you. Although Wyatt, it sounds like you're signed up for his coaching program.
Yes.
Which is great.
Sounds like you had a real big mindset shift.
Yeah.
I did. And I had to get out of my own way to be able to be that way, and, be coachable and keep an open mind and not take constructive criticism as a personal attack, because there for a while, that's what it was. I thought people were just, and I was like, no, that's not the way it is. I mean, there's more to it, right? Learn how to be patient. Obviously, things come to you when you're ready for them, not when you want them.
Yes.
That type of thing. But,
yeah. No, I like that. I love that you took action on something that you didn't really fully understand with your first deal. You listened to people that had been through experiences that you had never experienced, and you followed their advice. And you're embracing, learning from other people, putting your ego in check a little bit, because it's hard to do, especially as you get older. It's like, I feel like I should know this by now. So I get a little bit defensive if somebody starts, questioning me on why I'm doing things the way I'm doing. That's a natural defense mechanism that people have. Mm. But if you're able to keep that in check and just say, I'm willing to listen, and your perspective may be different than mine, but maybe it's something that I hadn't considered before. And if you can actually apply some of those principles to your day to day, it can wildly change your life trajectory. So I would say kudos to you, man, for keeping an open mind about those things and giving shout outs to, people that have affected you in a positive way. So I love it.
I think that also, no matter what age or what level you're at, that if you're open minded and listen to the people around you, and also part of the networking side of it, I mean, you're always going to be shocked. And that's one blessing we've had with this podcast. I mean, we just had a young man named Tucker Pinion. And in the end, I mean, Owen's really old and I'm just a little bit younger than him. And both of us, are you though? I mean, we're double his age.
I'm going to pop open your Aura ring and have it tell us how much older or younger you are than your cardiovascular age, and that'll tell us what our true ages are.
Okay, we'll look at that. We'll look at that.
Because I'm 5 years younger, which, by the way, matches up with your current age.
Okay, and so I'm sure I'm like 10 years under that then.
Are you?
But anyway, so we had this Tucker on, and at the end of it, Owen and I were just sitting here like, man, he's half our age. Owen's been doing it for 20 years. This guy's been doing it for 3. And he's already like eclipsing where we are standing right now. And you got to be able to be open-minded, listen to other people, because there's always somebody that's going to do better than you. Mm. And instead of like comparing yourself or judging yourself, you need to listen, be open-minded, and learn from those people. There's always somebody that's going to be doing it better, and you just got to be able accepting of it. So,
yeah. Okay. Abe, anything in your life, personal, professional, otherwise, like anything you're looking for in your business right now? Do you have a missing person, place, or thing that if somebody, happens to have a connection for that would be helpful?
Just open to ideas. I mean, just getting to know more people. Sorry.
Expanding your network.
Expanding my network. Thank you. And if there's anything I can do to help anyone, here in the Omaha area, I'm down. Hit me up.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to help. I'm always willing to give back to what was given to me.
Great. Love it.
And what's the best way to reach out to you or contact you?
Easiest way is my cell phone. Okay. I can just give it out. Or
that's your choice. Yeah.
Okay. I don't care. 952-220-6866 or on, I guess Facebook. No, because I keep my Facebook page pretty private because I have pictures of my kids and just other families in there and stuff like that. But just hit me or here at the brokerage. I don't know the number.
No, you give your cell phone number. I mean,
I got my cell phone number. Yeah. I was going to say, touche.
Back when we started, the first like 40 episodes, everybody gave their cell phone numbers, and then that is like slowly decreased.
Yeah,
but that's the best way though.
It is. I appreciate that. I think that's the best. The last thing I ask is, based on today's interview and the people you know in your circle, is there any other real estate investors that you would suggest or you want to call out to be on the podcast?
Yeah, I would suggest Kayleen Hack here at the office.
Oh, yes. Yeah. She's very hands-on in her flips.
She is, man, and she's right to the point. She's a no BS kind of person, man. Just gives it to you straight.
Yeah,
and that's what I like about her.
Love it.
We all need one of those people in our life. That's Owen to me. Well, with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of REIA Radio, Aiden Bear and Ted Kosh, I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to Abe, raw dogging it through your first few deals. Garcia, signing off.
So much raw dogging in this episode. On or off, I don't know, but there's a lot of raw dogging comments here.
Give Ted one old fashioned and you never know what's going to come out of his mouth.
Two. Without getting into our world famous, nationally famous, world famous OT.
Take 3.
Without getting into our nationally, but I mean, even world famous OT with Owen.
I'm going to take over here, Jory. All right. I think it's about time we dive into our world renowned.
I like that, world renowned OT.
Can I tap in? Could someone else tap in for my co-host position here? Sorry. Take 4.
Well, if it's gonna be a full take, you gotta do the lead into it. Go ahead.
Oh my God. All right. Listen, take over, get your shit together. Go.